All right, guys, we're coming off a big win on the road against Ole Miss, 80-71. We want to start off the podcast a little different. I wanted to remind everybody to rate and review us. It's a big deal for us. We're new, we're small. We'd love to get some ratings. If you listen, it's super easy. Just go down to the bottom. It gives you an automatic username. You don't have to sign up for anything on the Apple thing. The other big thing is we have two big podcasts coming up. One with Director of Communications, Marlene Navor, for the basketball team. That was a lot of fun talking to her this morning. We had a great time that we're going to drop that later this week and hear some background stuff on Auburn men's basketball from her. And another huge one and another announcement for us. We met with the Director of Shenanigans for Auburn men's basketball, Pablo Escobarner, and he has taught us how to make a meme. We signed up for Twitter. We have signed up and we have dropped our first meme on the page here. I'll show you exactly what it looks like. The Ole Miss men's basketball dropped it probably like 10-15 minutes after the podcast or after the game. So we sat around and waited. Here's our first meme here. We've dropped it in there. It says, "The Jungle Podcast reporting for duty. Private Jackson and Private Matt. Your loss will be discussed on the podcast." So that's what we're up to. Matt, who was your MVP?
Oh, man, it's Walker Kessler, but I do have another guy I want to point out as we talk about it. Walker was terrific. One of my keys was, could he bounce back and have a normal game where he's able to play his normal minutes without fear of officiating, and he was for the most part. He was terrific. He was awesome off the ball screens with dunks, put-back dunks. He blocked 2 3-pointers. He had a ton of blocks. He had like 4 steals. He did everything. He rebounded well when we were getting out rebounded. I just thought his presence, Auburn has no chance to win this game without his presence on the court.
Yeah, he was closing in on another triple-double there at the end with 20 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 blocks. Now that 7 blocks, like 1 or 2 of those is pretty close to the end, so we weren't watching for triple-double like we were for LSU, but man, he kept us in the game in some really dark times. This game, we went down 13 or 14 points at one point in the first, got hit in the mouth so hard, and that's going to keep happening with a team that should be number 1 in the AP polls tomorrow. If we don't get screwed, we're going to have a target on our back. This Ole Miss team came in shooting in the first half something like 50+% from the field, 50% from 3. Their zone gave us all kind of trouble like it always does every single year, but Walker kept us in this game with some alley-oops. I say he does. Matt's giving me the finger that no, but Walker kept us in with some alley-oops in there. In the second half, he clamped down on their team. Our guards really started getting up on their point guards and everybody way up near the half-court line, and they knew if their guy got past them, the Walker was going to clean it up, and he did. He cleaned up over and over again on these guys. It was a big deal on our defense on the turn up. And then on the other end, he had some really great offensive moves, not just the offensive, like not just the alley-oops, not just the putback dunks, but he had 2 or 3 times where he really made some great moves. He had an amazing move where he started back at the free throw line and dribbled up, and he'd gotten a bad charge last game. And this time he kind of moved his body to the side for 7-1. That's a big body to kind of like gracefully move to the side to do a finger roll into the goal. But man, Walker Kessler, what a great comeback after the just insane officiating from the game before.
And I assume he's your MVP?
Yes, definitely my MVP. I mean, Jabari had some really big moments. KD had some big moments, especially at the end of the half. We can talk about, we were down big in this game. Like it looked bad because they were shooting so well. Matt will say it's the defense's fault. It was to an extent, but man, they just seemed like they hit everything. They didn't miss an opportunity on us. It felt like in the first half, but right at the end, we needed to get it back to like below 10 to feel like we had a chance in this game. And KD made 2 huge steals, the kind of hamburger steals that KD makes every game. Took the ball, went down there. He again still seems to be hunting the foul instead of making the shot, but I'll take it when I think he ended up with 3 points out of the 4 possible on those 2 steals. And that's KD Johnson. He gives and he takes.
Back to Walker, just to make sure 20 points for him is insane. 10 rebounds, 7 blocks. I mean, he's making this stuff look easy. There aren't many games in Auburn basketball history where guys have 7 blocks, an individual. I mean, it's nuts. And you just see the value. Let's see, he was on the floor 32 minutes, again, playing the most minutes, him and Jabari, of anybody on the team. Like, he was incredible. You did a great job of detailing his offensive moves. I do think we have to point out Wendell Green was fantastic tonight. both halves. The offense flowed so well. There was a guy, Deshaun Ruffin is one of their elite recruits that they have at point guard. Zep Jasper did a great job on him. Wendell Green outshined him like crazy tonight. He hit shots. He made tremendous passes. He was engaged defensively. I think Wendell and Kessler, to me, are really the main reasons this comeback happened, because in the first half, Auburn shot 53% too. Our offense was fine. The great irony of this game is Auburn did a fantastic job against the zones that Ole Miss played. We were super efficient. We knocked them out of it. They quit playing it because we were just getting great looks. So kudos to the staff for that end. I'll have a whole other rant for the defensive effort in the first half later. But the offense was good all night. It really was.
I think this could be a good time. We can do it more later on if we want. I want everybody to rewind their minds a bit to where we were last year in the point guard position when Sharif was sitting out, and we got to a point where we're playing Alan Flanagan at point guard. We had a time where it felt like Jalen was our backup point guard at times. Justin Powell was out. Man, it was so frustrating to just watch us not even be able to get the ball up the court at times, and how detrimental that was to our offense and just how awful that was. And then you fast forward a little bit, Sharif Cooper leaves early. We're so upset that he left early when he really shouldn't have, and he's kind of showing now that he shouldn't have left. But then we get like, okay, well, we'll go transfer portal. This Zep guy from Charleston. Okay, they say he's a pretty good defender. Wendell Green from Eastern Kentucky. Oh, another small guy. Okay, well, maybe it'll work out. He'll play some backup or something and come in and hit some shots and things like, okay. And to go to where we are now, where we're just like, yeah, logo 3 Wendell. Makes sense. The drives make sense. The distribution makes sense. The guy is going to come off the bench and just be a firecracker the other team's going to be afraid of the entire game. If you take your mind back to where we were a year ago at this time to where we are now, it's already impressive that I think everyone's impressed by Wendell as it is. But if you can make your brain go backwards and put this guy on a different team or something, your mind's blown. We just have so many good players on this team that a Walker Kessler's going off for 20 points and can do this. And Jabari Smith's doing what he's doing. So Wendell, he doesn't get the MVP every night. Like maybe he deserves at times. So that's a Wendell shout out. Love Wendell.
Yeah, we said before the game, right? We wanted to give him a little more attention. He probably deserves it as the sixth man who's finishing all these games, and he's leading us to wins down the stretch. He takes care of the ball. If you watched his film, which I did, I'm not a film study guy, but when we got his commitment, you watch him and you saw some of the flashes of, I know everybody hates the Jared Harper. I'm not comparing him to Jared Harper, but small guard, can shoot he could shoot from midcourt last year too. He was an all conference player, but you wonder if, and maybe we should just trust Bruce because he has such a track record with these small guards. But man, he is just playing the point guard position superbly, and you can just see him getting more and more comfortable. And by the way, we were on that. We talked about preseason before the podcast started, but you and I talked about it sounded like in preseason camp he was going to start, and he did. He started the season at point guard. It kind of surprised a lot of people. And then he got benched, but now he has this amazing role. And again, I just keep praising him for the way he's handled that, because at the end of the day, he's playing the minutes that matter.
He honestly would have won his starting job back at this point. The issue is just that the chemistry is so good at this, Actually, did he lose his starting job?
Yep.
Was he okay? He played 2 when he was in there, right? And KD took over his position. Yeah, really, he could take this position back from KD. It's just we found out that he's such a good point guard and such a great guy coming off the bench that we're not going to change that. And it's better to have Zep kind of on that starting lineup because there's only so many hands that can shoot at times. When Wendell comes in afterwards, we kind of take a shooter or 2 out. And it's perfect to have Wendell in and be ball heavy at that point.
People forget Wendell struggled. I mean, he really, I think he had a game with 7 or 8 turnovers early in the season.
But it wasn't just Wendell struggling. KD came out so on fire at the beginning of the year too, that it was like, I don't think on another team, if KD's not on this team, Wendell probably just gets to work through that. But KD was just playing so well. And I think we're seeing still that KD it's so hard not to talk an hour about KD, like we've said, because he's so fascinating as a player. And he shows them again in this game that he gives and he takes, and we needed it so bad there at the end of the half. And really, honestly, great game from KD. I don't have a lot of complaints about this game, which we've gone on and on, but he hit open threes. He made good passes, even on drives, one to Flanagan at the end there that really helped put the kind of lead on top that felt like they weren't going to get back. I think that was back to back. He went open 3, then went down there, got a steal, ran down, and what I usually would have thought he would have just tried to finish through contact or whatever, and he gave it up to Flanagan, and Flanagan finished. It was huge. Great game from KD. I mean, great game. A lot of great games in this one. Maybe not on defense for everybody, but man, we got the target on our back and we got the best shot I think Ole Miss is going to give anybody all year. And we still came out with a 9-point victory.
On the road.
On the road.
I mean,
on a week where so many top 10 teams, some top 10 teams, including the number 1 team, lost 2 games, and we won 2 games on the road at a ranked Alabama and an Ole Miss team that like gave their best shot they're going to give all year.
Yeah, everybody's losing, by the way. So, I mean, if Auburn had lost this game, it would have been just more of the same. I mean, I think 10 to 12 or 14 ranked teams lost this week. I mean, out of the 25. It really is insane. The parody's crazy. It's a lot of fun.
And not just on the road either. Some of these top 10 or top teams lost at home too. So for us to do 2 games in a row away, if you're not a big basketball guy or college basketball guy, winning away is so tough, especially now in the SEC with how many good coaches we have and how much talent's come into the league. That these away games, it's the same when they come to our place. When people come to Auburn Arena, we expect to win. It doesn't matter really what that ranking is unless it's some ridiculous thing. We know that our crowd's going to go nuts. We know we shoot way better at home. It's the same for everybody else. So the fact that it's kind of showing how great this team is. We've seen it 2 games in a row. We've been collecting these, like, I need to make a better metaphor than Pokemon cards or whatever, but we just keep collecting these wins in different ways. And maybe this is like somewhat similar to St. Louis, maybe a way, but it's slightly different. You just keep finding ways to fight through adversity and keep ending up winning like this because different players step up when you need them to. That's the sign of a championship level team.
We could go down the roster, right? If we wanted to do 5-second reaction of like, hey, KD, huge steals at the end of the first half, hit 3 threes in big moments. Wendell just
we don't even have to do 5 seconds. We don't have to do 5 seconds necessarily. We can do.
No, but I'm just pointing out something.
Yeah.
Wendell runs the offense beautifully, lockdown defense on their point guard. Jabari, run stopper, big shots. Kessler, blocks, defense, rebounding. Flanagan, tough drive, still hit some. He struggled a little bit. Zep, 8 points from him is massive. Cardwell had some great play. Everybody up and down. It's just when you have 9 guys, which they've shortened the bench to 9 a little bit now, but you just trust that a couple of these players are going to make plays. And I think all of us probably had different moments of doubting it as the first half unfolded, but it's great to see their competitiveness and their spirit. And like you said, winning in different ways is a sign of a really good team, and winning when you don't play your best, which I think tonight was a case of that.
We really shrunk our bench on this one, and we shrunk it some on the last game too. We thought Chris Moore had played the last 2, which is a little sad because I think he is on a lot of SEC teams who'd play more, and our team's so good right now. Jalen Williams only played 8 minutes on this one. Cardwell only played 7 minutes, which is another testament to Kessler and how well he played in the second half. Kessler really turned it up to another level in the second half, both on defense and on offense. I hope we can keep playing more players. A big part of this was the depth and how we can run. I think part of it maybe was because we just could never get this game running the way we wanted to. They always set up their defense on us. Even when we thought we were going to make a run, the Ole Miss player would fake a injury and the ref would blow a whistle and we couldn't get running. It just felt like we never could quite get going. I think maybe if we got running a little more, we would have played some of these guys a little longer or differently. I just hope that going forward, we don't shrink it to, not only was it 9 minutes, but like I said, Cardwell was 7 minutes and Jalen with 8. I want us to keep this identity of being a run fast team that like goes all out. And I think a big thing too, from game to game, when we play this many guys, we can be like, you can see it down the stretch. And I don't want us to like tighten up necessarily because it might make us pay for a different game the next game when somebody's tired.
The thing you worry about is when guys play more than like 32. Like if you look at Ole Miss, they had 3 starters play over 35 minutes. So Brooks, Ruffin, and Morrell, who was fantastic. He played 38. So, I mean, he played the whole game. Even though we only played 9 and we played a couple guys sparingly, nobody was over 80% of the game, which is, if you look overall, I think Bruce likes to keep them in the high 20s, not low 30s, which, again, only Flanagan was 30, Kessler was 32, Jabari was 32. So we called
a timeout at one point, right? Like we were talking about this on the text. I want to hear your thoughts on it. We had to call a timeout when we were down a decent amount to put Jabari back in the game. We've not seen that all year. I thought he was taking a heat check timeout, which Bruce never does. We've talked about it on this podcast a bunch of times. I said he took a heat check. Matt said, no, he took a timeout to put Jabari back in. Walk me through that one a little bit.
Well, part of it's listening to him on the podcast. He's been doing a lot of national media, which again, we'll talk. We recorded an interview with Marlene Navor that kind of touched on that. So be on the lookout for that again. But he talked very openly with, I forget what show he was on, but he just said, I don't like to do it. It ramps the other crowd up even more when you call a timeout and they feel you're showing weakness. So my thoughts were Jabari had been sitting at the side for a little bit. I think we were down 7. And you have a timeout that you have to, you either use it in the first half or you lose it. It automatically goes away no matter what. I just thought the irony was after that timeout with Jabari on the floor, Ole Miss extended to their largest lead of the game at 14. But I think he was just trying to get his subs in and maybe a little bit of a heat check. But he really doesn't like to do that, as we talked about.
You almost never seem to know on this team what lineup is going to be the lineup that breaks through. We've watched every game so specifically more than most everybody, we don't get to go to the games, but we're here breaking down the games after everything and thinking about them all week long. And I don't really feel like I ever know which lineup is going to be the one that breaks through. Every once in a while I'll look up and there's a lineup where there's, my theory is that there's 4 guys on this team and 2 of them always need to be on the court, like Kessler, Flanagan, KD, Jabari, and Wendell Green. So 5 of them really. But every once in a while, there'll be a weird lineup where there's only 1 of them, like Lior and Cambridge and Jalen. And some people are playing. I'm like, man, this is a weak lineup. And it'll happen where we're going through a slump and I look up Cardwell is on there and you're like, oh, this is a weak lineup. There's only 1 scorer out there. But then sometimes that same lineup is the one that breaks us through. And it's crazy. I love that we have so many options. I wish I had a little more theory on what situations we need each player,
But I don't think Bruce knows. And again, that's part of the coaching game, right? Tonight, I texted you. It was Zep and Wendell both playing. It was Cambridge, and then Jabari and Walker. They had an incredible 3 or 4 minute stretch defensively that really flipped the game from Auburn down 4 or 5 to Auburn up 6 or 7. And Ole Miss got back tied at one point, but that was, to me, the defining stretch. And you're right, you don't know which group it's going to be.
Shout out to Ole Miss, too. I know I've not watched them much this year or anything. They gave us all we could take in that first half. They did not miss. And I'm going to get mad after this to break down the defense a little bit for us in the first half, but they did not miss at all. And not only that, when we came back in the second half, we had a great comeback and we got up maybe 8 or 9 or 10 points or something. They did not fade. They came right back on us. They kept this thing close the entire time. Maybe the last 2 minutes, we really finally took it away. But a lot of teams like this, a number 1 team versus another team on the road, sure, they might do that big hit. Sure, they might keep in it the whole time. But down the stretch, when the bigger team finally takes that big lead, it's usually done, I feel like. And Ole Miss did not step down. And at any moment, we could have missed a shot and they could have made a shot and this game could have been totally different. There was a timeout with maybe 3 minutes left, a commercial break that I was texting Matt and some friends. If they hit a 3 here, I'm scared because we were only up maybe 5 or 6.
It was 7. And then they got a 3-point play.
Yeah. And it was this could have changed. We could have turned the ball over. I think there was even a really sloppy play where we were lucky that Wendell got tackled on it. And there was another one. There was a couple sloppy plays down the stretch that we were lucky. I think Jabari threw one away. Flanagan had some weird stuff going on. And it was we'll look up at this 9-point win and be like, wow, we struggled, but we got our win or whatever. But there was a bunch of several moments down that stretch, past even when we stretched out at 8-point or 9-point lead, that they could have turned this whole thing around and made us look silly. So I think a big thing is the first half. How did we get down that bad? What did you see on defense that made them shoot that well?
Well, I agree with you. I just want to compliment Ole Miss. I thought they were physical. I thought they played their butts off. I thought they took the fight to us in a way that really I hadn't seen a team do this year. I think my biggest problem defensively, yes, they hit a lot of shots, but so did we. It was 20-18 in the first 8 minutes or something. Everybody was hitting shots. I was frustrated. I guess it was our game plan. We give a lot of credit to the coaching and, the scouts. I know Bruce always gives a lot of credit to his assistants. So we played this matchup zone. And if you remember over the years, Javon and Jared would do it where one guard's kind of at the top and one guard sits back kind of in that free throw area. And the idea is that you're going to match up with guys as they move and try to beat the zone. I don't know if it was a variation of that we hadn't practiced much. I don't know if it was the guys coming off the Alabama game maybe weren't as locked into the plan, but there were 5 or 6 instances in the first 5 or 10 minutes of this game where in man-to-man defense, and in zone defense, our guys just were not communicating effectively. And two guys are following one, leaving somebody wide open. And to me, those breakdowns, giving wide open shots to SEC caliber players at home and the thing you have to keep in mind when you're a ranked, this high, this is an opportunity for Ole Miss, like, to make the tournament down the road if they beat a team like Auburn. Like, this is their season. And that's
get ready. This will be every game from now on. We are not used to this, but get ready. These stressful, like, best shots from these opposing teams is what it's going to be like. We have not been in that scenario before as fans. So,
but you know what's going to make it easier? If we guard people. And I think the thing with this team has been how good and consistent the defense has been. And I was just really disappointed in the amount of breakdowns, the lack of missed assignments, miscommunications, and then you add to that getting bullied on rebounding. It got much better in the second half. We lost by 5 at the end of the game, but
at one point I had texted we were -10, and it felt like it because it was really frustrating when we were trying to make a comeback. That it felt like our defense had turned up a ton, and they would just keeping their cushion of a lead by getting offensive rebounds and putting them back. And it's extremely frustrating to watch us play good defense to give up a rebound to a dunk or something like that.
Well, and just to follow up, you're right. The adjustment we made at the end of the first half in the last minute was, all right, we got to scrap this zone. Either our kids aren't playing it right or it's not a good fit. And again, Bruce has used that zone really effectively. So I don't know. I'm not that level of knowing exactly what they had worked on or what they had practiced. But at the end, you saw us pick up ball pressure full court. That's where KD gets those steals. And I believe the whole second half, maybe 1 or 2 possessions, the whole second half, we just said we played man-to-man. And I texted a lot of my friends who were watching the game at halftime. That was the adjustment to me, too. You just man up. And if you can't stay in front of their guys, you're not going to win the game. And the big swing for me was our small guards. We've talked so much about KD and Zep and Wendell. They locked in man-to-man defense despite their size, and they did not let the guards penetrate and get to the basket. And that changed the script. Ole Miss had 44 in the first half, and then 18, like with 4 or 5 minutes left in the game in the second half. You can't tell me it's just because Ole Miss missed shots. We were locked in, we brought the energy, and we controlled the pace.
44 in the first half for Ole Miss, 27 in the second half for Ole Miss.
And that's garbage time points. They were at 8, like I said, that's why I said 18. They only had 18 points at the last TV timeout in the second half. So, like, we just completely turned up the heat, locked them down. I'm very disappointed we didn't come out that way. But again, you give a lot of credit to the kids and to the coaches for adjusting and making the plays they need to make to come back and win the game.
I wish I had a better basketball IQ, and we'll learn together, podcast listeners, on some of this stuff. There's 2 interesting things I thought I saw on defense that I want to hear what you think about it. One, I think it's interesting how well our big men, when we do switches up to a guard, there's times where Kessler or Cardwell has to go way out past the 3-point line on a guard. And we've seen Wendell demolish guys like that, hit threes over them, drive past them. It feels like Kessler and Cardwell have great timing and really great athleticism. They get up there past 3 to stop the kind of offensive possession. And the guy does a kind of a step back, the point guard does. And then they get back so quickly that by the time they've decided what they're going to do, either shoot or drive, we've already established our defense again. And all it does is like take 10 seconds off the clock, basically. So I would think, what do you think about that?
It's called hedging the ball screen. And I mean, you're right. Our big guy, really all of our big guys are terrific at it. Being at the Florida game in person, I could not believe how good Cardwell is at it. Seeing it in person, he, at his size, just freaks guards out. Now, Ole Miss, and that's my point, right? Ole Miss broke that down so easily in the first half, so many times. And we've watched this team all year. It just doesn't happen that easy against us. It hasn't so far. Hopefully this doesn't become a trend. But so that's how we like to play. We like to hedge with the big guy, recover, and then you'll notice the guys behind that screen action on the wings are going to be there to help if the big can't get back in time to get to the roll guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I am learning here. We are hedging the guards, hedging the
ball screen. And
hedging the ball screens, guys. Sorry if you look for expertise. I hope Matt can be your expert here. I am going to be the voice of the fan, hedging the ball screens.
The other thing, while we're talking ball screen defense, this is making me so happy. One of my favorite things about Bruce is anytime the ball goes to the sideline on the wing, we're going to ice the ball screen, which is just a shorthand term for you're going to see them. The guard is going to defend the middle of the court and try to keep that player on the side. And what it does is it almost negates that ball screen because the guy has to go up the sideline. He's guarded by the sideline. He's guarded by the guard in front, and he's guarded by the big guy who's in front of him. So, and again, we broke down on that a few times. And that's another reason I don't like the zone against a team that maybe is a lesser team, because I just don't want to give guys that much airspace when I know how good our man-to-man and on-ball, off-ball defense can be.
Here's another one. I hope we're not getting too wonky for everybody. I think we're learning here a little bit. In the second half, I noticed a bunch that seemed to really throw them off is that our guards got up really aggressively at around the half-court line on their guards and would really get in their face. And I felt like the big thing with that was they got up in their face and they played great defense. We have very athletic, small guys to kind of like disrupt them, and we didn't get the refs let us play. That was a big thing too. I mean, we'll talk about the fouls in a minute, but they let us play comparatively to where we could do some hand checking. We could stay in front of them without just getting bullcrap tic-tac fouls. And then when they did finally get past us at times, Kessler cleaned up the balls down the stretch a ton. I feel like that is a huge confidence builder, that you can play that style of harassing ball on their guards because you have Kessler back there to swat at anything. Good luck getting down there. Sure, they can drive and dish to somebody when Kessler's on their jump, but Kessler, man, great second half on cleaning up everything that got past guys. It was like I was excited. I was almost excited when I would see a guard get past our guards and see that Kessler's paying attention and sitting there ready, because 90% of the time it was an amazing block. So
it's a great point. Bruce wants to play 94 feet. He used to be, which is the length of the court. He used to be a pressing guy before they changed the rules, and you just used to be able to hand check a lot and touch guys. Now you can't. They'll call it most of the time. So he's kind of adjusted to not as much of a press, but you'll notice KD will hit a shot and he'll linger. He'll just linger down there, pick up his man, but he'll just kind of see if he can get a steal or see if he can do something. But even if he doesn't, it's slowing them down, getting them into their offense later in the shot clock when they get across half court, and just causing some havoc. And that's really, again, that's what turned the game. It was Zep Jasper all over Deshaun Ruffin, their 5-star point guard. And it was Wendell and KD. Those short guards really started to make them uncomfortable and take them out of their flow offensively. And I'm trying not to linger on it. I don't know why that wasn't our plan in the first half.
I don't know. I guess maybe they came in, they saw something they thought on film. I don't know, but I did want to underline for the people that didn't get to watch or how big of a deal it was that we went down that hard in the first half and try to, one day we'll have to do a lost podcast. One day, hopefully not very soon. I'll bring it up again. We have yet to have to do a lost podcast because we did the tournament after 3 games instead of after one of the games, and we're still undefeated in regulation. So we're getting our brains exercised for the day that we do have to break down what happened. Yeah.
Well, I think you were probably like me. I mean, I was mentally getting a little ready there in the first half when it was getting out of control. Not as much because they were hitting shots. Again, for me, it was more like we're just not playing to our standard. We're just flat out, period. We're not. I just want to, again, you pointed out, let's just take a big picture, right? 5-0 in the SEC. That's back-to-back road wins, 3 road wins already. You're going to play 9 of them. We've already got 3, which is, like you said, scrapping together every win you can get. They're 16-1. They have the nation's longest win streak. They may be number 1 when the poll comes out. Enjoy all that. And I think we also have to mention in this, Bruce has talked a lot this week about, we're traveling like Kentucky. You can hear our fans in road arenas, which it makes me smile every single time it happens because it's never happened in my entire life following this basketball program. And I can't wait to be a part of it in Knoxville and hopefully another game before the season ends.
Huge shout out to the away fans. We saw the movement online of everyone talking about going to Oxford and everything. The whole game we heard people doing it. The Let's Go Auburns. Amazing. The defense chants on defense as if it was like a home game. The AUs after free throws. Incredible away. And at times, man, we were texting when we were down hard, and our away fans, every time we made little mini runs to try to keep that from going too hard, and our fans got into it and did defense chants and things like that. honestly, I don't know for sure that they don't stretch that lead out to 20 and we don't make it all the way back without the away fans there. And that's a huge deal. It's so cool to see. And even though the stupid SEC network announcers were on Zoom, which I'll rant about briefly here, I'm all about the safety. The podcast is all about the safety. But those announcers are at the Duke game and they're at the Kentucky game. They're just not coming to the Auburn Ole Miss game. And so that's annoying to me that they're picking and choosing the best moments to not be safe or whatever. So it's annoying. Luckily, they brought up several times the away fan noise, and they even had somebody message them or something like, oh, we have sources in the stadium that say there's tons of Auburn fans. There's like, oh my God, you have to have sources to tell you what's going on in the stadium. But big shout out, guys. Huge shout out to the Auburn traveling fans.
This is a thing. I mean, I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast yet, but Georgia, I mentioned on this podcast, and Athens, cheap Saturday destination. They sold out all their tickets, and it's not because Georgia's any good. They're winless in the SEC, and the cheapest tickets last time I checked on StubHub were $60, up from $20. So Auburn people are going to run that place. Knoxville, I know a ton of people going to Knoxville. So again, if you're close, if you're a few hours from any of these cities that Auburn's going to be in, even on a weeknight, it is making such a statement about this program and this fan base. It is impressing people nationally. And I think that's super cool. And I did want to point out, one of the coolest things I saw tonight was Devin Cambridge on the bench next to Zep, I think. And they're sitting there. This is like 10 minutes left in the game. And we make a free throw when we're making a little run. And they realize, like, they're doing the AU thing, and they start doing it with their hands. They're like, hey, and then at the end, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger chant. A little too early, in my opinion. It was still like 40 seconds to go. But the bench loved it. The bench loved it. I saw a tweet before we came on that Walker Kessler put a kid on his shoulders for him to lead War Eagle on the way out. Like, all this stuff is happening. Get there. Be a part of it if you can.
A big fan of Tiger Walk too. I saw the videos from Tiger Walk. It looked like a home game, like just insane stuff out there. Let's get into pregame notes here. We'll start with mine. We barely snuck these pregame, buzzer beat these pregame notes, and we were so busy today doing podcasts with Marlene and Pablo Escobar and creating our very first meme for the Twitter sphere that we almost forgot the pregame. But mine was, can Auburn break the Kermit Davis zone curse? And now Matt's a little more basketball IQ than me. Matt says yes.
They did.
I say this ends up being twofold. So maybe we broke the zone curse. I don't know if we ended up also breaking eventually the Kermit Davis at Ole Miss curse. But man, did they give us the shot. It really felt like we were in the curse. And maybe this team is just that good that the curse is still alive. We just got through it this time.
I will say we have better players. We have guys who can punish that zone a little bit. They went back to that zone one possession. You know what it was? It was when they got it to within 4 right after you texted. I hope they don't get 3. They got 3. We come down on the other end. They play their zone. And I believe it was Flanagan gets the ball in the wing, drives in the middle, perfect pass to Jabari on the wing, wide open 3, bottom, and that ended the game for all intents and purposes.
Well, we may never see this again. Enjoy the mess out of this. The Jabari Smith run stoppers are just, we don't have to do, it's like he is on NBA. He's like just playing a different level of basketball. Basically, it's like the older brother, like as much as he's the younger brother on this team, like personality wise and baby face and everything. He's like when you're playing with your older brother in basketball or something, and the game gets close and they say, all right, this game got a little closer than I meant it to. Bam, I'm going to make sure it's done. He just hits that shot so effortlessly when we need it most. It makes it look so casual.
And just to put some context, if you didn't get to watch, he was 0 for 4 from 3 before that shot. You're talking about a 4-point game with 2 minutes to go on the road. You haven't hit a 3 all night. And he honestly, I think he got physically challenged. We bragged on Ole Miss. Man, they had a 7-foot guy. I'm like, how did Ole Miss get a guy like that? He was a good player. And the guy Jabari was guarding was a physical player. I think Jabari got pushed around a little bit. He held his own okay. But yeah, and Bruce called him the best jump shooter he's ever coached. And you can see why.
The jumpers on this team are really, they talk about modern basketball. You shoot a 3 or you hit a dunk or layup. There's nothing in between. The jump shot's dead. That's not a thing anymore. Not on this team, apparently. If almost every time I hold my breath, even with Jabari, after this long of him doing it over and over again, Jabari and Wendell both have hit so many jump shots from that mid-range that when they're like, it's part of Jabari's just like plan now is to back a guy down and hit that, and it's money every time. I'd love to see the percentages on his back down turnaround jump shots. It's got to be like in the 80%. And Wendell too. And it's frustrating to see them do it because the principle is either shoot an open three or do a layup. Don't shoot this like stop jump shot. They want you to do that. But when Wendell's shooting it and when Jabari's shooting it, you're like, all right, it's money.
And if it's open, and I would add Alan Flanagan on the move in mid-range and Jalen Williams in mid-range. I feel comfortable with any of those guys taking.
That's kind of the order, right? If you're going to take a jump, if you have to get somebody to take a jump shot, it's going to be Jabari, this will be Wendell, this will be Flanagan, this Jalen.
But just, you're right. It's still a valuable shot if you can make it, and I'm all about the analytic. Bruce is a big 3-point guy. We've talked about that, but you have to use the players you have best. And one of the best things about this team is that we're not completely live by the three, die by the three like we have been in the past. We have these weapons, and I think we're doing a really good job of utilizing them in the ways that they need to be.
Even though we hit some big threes, I feel like we live by the drive, honestly, and getting the ball down there. Because I wondered one day if KD could be one of our three guys, or Wendell hits these NBA threes kind of like as like an extra to our offense. KD hits these in your face threes or open threes as like an extra. Zep hits a couple of them. Jabari hits those run stopper threes. I rarely like compared to old Auburn teams that like aimed for that three and felt like that was like the major part of their offense. It feels kind of strange to feel like when we shoot a three and get it, it's like in addition to our offense, right? Is it?
Yes, no. And in the past, it has been our offense. And I think that's why at times over the years, even with all this success Auburn's had, it still at times has felt a little dependent on the shooting. Tonight's a great example. Again, I do want to point out our offense was over 50% in the first half, very effective, very efficient. And thankfully, if it wasn't, we would have been in real trouble. So
it was a shootout. It was a shootout to start the game, which was bizarre. Historically, with Auburn, Bruce Pearl versus Kermit Davis, Ole Miss, it's been a slugfest at times. To have a shootout when we were having like 20-18, I think, to start the game, it was bizarre. I was saying, texting like, WTF is happening right now? How are we in a shootout with this Ole Miss team that loves to slow the game down?
Well, here's the stat of the night. We haven't talked about it. The reason Auburn won this game, they lost rebounding, they got punked a little bit, they gave up 44 in the first half, blah, blah, blah. They had 6 turnovers against Ole Miss. And if you've watched those Ole Miss games before, the zones give you trouble. The physicality of the man-to-man gives you trouble. 6. And they've gone down every SEC game from 21 in that LSU game that was crazy all the way. 6 is extremely good. So I just want to point out, of all the things Auburn struggled with tonight, they finally they picked a great game to take great care of the ball and get a lot of shots. I mean, they got 4 more shots ultimately than Ole Miss, even getting out rebounded, which is hard to do.
I'm glad you brought that up because you put that as part of your pregame notes, and I have too at times on these turnovers. And we didn't put either of us put that in our pregame notes. I mean, we were buzzer beating, so we were just really doing top of our head. But it shows that the top of your head was not the turnover on an away game like this. So it's huge that they've calmed that down.
Yep.
The next one is, can Kessler stay out of foul trouble in the SEC? And part of that is also how can he play when he's not in foul trouble? And man, what a game from Kessler. We already talked about it at the start with the MVP, but man, kept us in the game when times were tough, played amazing defense in the second half, showed some great offensive moves. He shot a 3, didn't make it, no jump shot this game or anything, but we've seen them all now. We've seen that he can do these different things. It's super fun to watch just how athletic this guy is. Another big thing, Matt doesn't have anything else. We've talked about Kessler, but I think this is a good opportunity to talk about the fouls. The refs were interesting this game to come from Alabama, where we had so much foul trouble and it was constant whistles the entire game, to have a first half where Ole Miss didn't have a single foul until the last 20 seconds.
KD's steals, they got 2 on KD's steals, but that was
that was the only reason they got 2 fouls, was because KD stole the ball and did his usual, like going straight to the basket as fast as he could and getting that foul call when we've debated if he's like hunting the foul or not. But the fact that he only got the only 2 fouls were in the last 20 seconds off of KD steals going to the basket was crazy. Sorry, Matt, you're about to say that we only had 4 on the other side, right?
Yeah, and the refs really let it go. And again, part of that is one team, in my opinion, wasn't playing great defense. So you're not going to foul a lot when you're leaving guys wide open.
And the other team was playing zone, and we had to work the ball around a lot with zone. And when your offense is alley oops, when are you going to get the foul call? We weren't driving the ball. In the next half, we started that half driving the ball. We figured out ways to get that ball down low and get those foul calls. We started off the game with several foul calls that kind of helped us with free throws to get back in the game.
And perhaps more importantly, we got out and ran a little bit. It never got full tilt Auburn basketball, but it was more so in the second half. And you're right about the zone. I mean, part of the reason you play a zone so often, like I grew up watching Syracuse a lot, it does keep guys out of foul trouble. It protects players if you don't feel great one-on-one, which Ole Miss looked great one-on-one to me, but they love that zone. They love the different look it provides. And so it's not surprising they would have less fouls, but it's been a long time, if ever, when I've seen a team have 0 fouls with 19 and a half minutes into a game.
I wish we had better access to stats like that to see like how many times has a half gone without a foul on a team and like what the results were. Another interesting thing about the fouls in Kessler like this, he had 2 jump balls this game where he blocked a ball and the ref called jump ball. And I saw some I'm on Twitter now. The podcast is on Twitter now, so I can actually talk about seeing reactions on Twitter instead of just Reddit like I usually do. But people are like, does this referee know what a jump ball is? It's pretty freaking rare that you get the jump balls on the blocks. You see them every once in a while, and usually when you see them, you know you saw them. It's a strong guy with another strong guy, and they are stuck in the air with their hand on the ball like that. That was not what happened on these. This ref, I feel like, was playing some sort of game of like, I'm not sure if that was a foul or a block. I'm going to call it a jump ball. And we got the ball back one time and not the other. And honestly, Matt texts this, I'd rather have that happen than them automatically whistle and give Kessler a foul each time when they're not sure if it's a jump ball or a foul or a block. But I think that was, he ended with 3 fouls. It's so easy in the Alabama game. That whistle is a foul on Kessler, and he's fouled out of the game, and the game's completely different. So good on the ref for at least not calling a foul. He called a jump ball, which is also like a punk move, I feel like, but I'll take it over foul.
Well, the second one I was somewhat happy about because Walker went for a jump fake and got in the air, and he could have easily gotten another foul, and it would have been his fault. He didn't. He kind of got a block / maybe foul / maybe jump ball, but the jump ball was theirs, so it flipped it back to us, I believe is how that went. Or maybe it either got us possession or it set us up to get another possession down the road.
The first one, he got a jump ball and it went right back to Ole Miss, which was frustrating because I felt like it was a block. And I thought it was crazy they called that because, like I said, it's usually when they have a block jump ball, it is super obvious. And that's why they have to call it that way. And it's like people go, well, okay. Almost every time that's called, you're like, that makes sense. That was weird. And like almost like 2 wizards or 2 like Super Saiyans like hitting a power thing together or whatever. But anyways, I'm glad he didn't call those fouls. It changes the game completely when Kessler's allowed to do what he's allowed to do. My last one is, can we continue to see Flanagan build his role? And I'm going to say no. I feel like, we talked about he did some interesting things. He still drove the ball like nobody else can on this team, in my opinion. But, man, he had some weird stuff this game. It was 6 points, 2 fouls, 1 rebound, which is, I think, crazy for a guy like Flanagan. I feel like he should really be on the 3 position, a pretty strong guy, even though it feels like he lost some weight over the offseason. Feels like he could be banging the boards.
Airball to 3, really bad turnover, traveling and towards the end of the game that kind of kept them in it a little bit.
Those big ones, like it's one thing if he didn't do those 2, if he didn't airball that 3 and make that turnover, you would just be like it was a nothing game. But honestly, I feel like those 2 take it from a game where he already didn't do a ton to a game where it's like, man, that really sucks that he didn't keep that trajectory going. It felt like, sure, he's making his comeback, but each game he's doing something that reminds us that he's an alpha on this team, and we need that down the stretch. This game was a little disappointing that it was kind of maybe what we would have expected from his first game or 2. And it's not the first time he's airballed a 3, I feel like, too. Maybe it was an airball before, maybe it was a brick before, but his 3s are definitely not where they were from last year. So I'm hoping he can get that shot back. I feel like we need him. We're showing that we can win so many different ways, and we already showed that some without him. But to be as truly great as I hope we can be, I think we're going to need him to be able to do those dribble drives, to pick up those fouls, hit the foul shots like he did the game before. I don't know. We still have time to get that chemistry going. I don't think this is a mark on, oh no, it's not going right. I just think it's I'm so excited to see him do well that it might be another couple games.
Well, we might start clamoring for the Allen Flanagan game like we did the Jabari game, which we got. I mean, again, I think it's his 5th game, and he didn't participate in preseason. He didn't, he's been out for so long. I don't know what the number is where you stop using that as an excuse, but I like to see that he had 30 minutes. So he's on. I mean, they're letting him play. He's kind of claimed that spot that's his, ahead of Cambridge. And let's just track it the next few weeks. I want him to get there too, but I really want him to get there, at the end of the year.
Yeah, he just really felt like he was on an upward trajectory, and this one doesn't feel like it's on the same. It wasn't a next step. It was honestly a slightly step back. I think overall you're going to look and it's fine. It's just something to watch. If it's like this next game, I'll be a little more worried against UGA. I would love for us. I know we don't work the ball to people and different things, but a team like UGA at home should be an easy win. Not that any win's necessarily easy in SEC, but if there's going to be an easy win, it's going to be UGA. And I would love to see us kind of try to work him in a little more, get him comfortable. But I know that's not something we do every day.
But you might see it. You're right. And I think they will. I do think that's going to be part of the plan. But on this team, everybody not named Jabari Smith, you're going to have games where you're either forgotten about, you're quiet, you get in foul trouble, you struggle. There's going to be. Jabari's
even had games where he struggled. He struggled in the South Carolina game.
But he finds a way to have 14
double, right? Wasn't that like a casual double in the game?
So he's going to have his imprint on
He's a freak. He's a freak. Yeah. You can't compare anybody to Jabari.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, everybody else, just get ready. Like, Cambridge had a 1 point, 12-minute game tonight. And he wasn't that. He was on the floor for our big run. I mean, he made some contributions. He got a couple offensive rebounds that were good. But, you're going to have nights where you're just real quiet on this team with 9 guys.
Your pregame notes, can Auburn handle the hype and play the same way despite the opportunity to make history?
They did not. I don't know if anything I've said about the defense is jiving with your brain, but I don't know. They hit a lot of shots, but yeah. I don't know how anybody could watch that game, watch the first and second half and say, oh, well, Ole Miss just stopped making shots. No, like we asserted our will on that game. And I don't think it had to do with the hype necessarily. I think it's just going on the road and mental lapses start snowballing, and it can snowball really fast. I mean, we saw that tonight in a great way. So I think they figured it out and they win. And when you win on the road in the league, we celebrate. We're going to talk. We're not going to complain. But I'm just really glad. I honestly hope they get the number 1 thing just so they don't have to worry about it and talk about it anymore. And then from there, it's just go play ball,
I thought it was one shout out. You talked about this, like the atmosphere and the number 1 ranking. The other thing I almost forgot about, I think it's 50-50 defense versus them making the shot. They didn't miss an opportunity to make a shot. This is college basketball. These are not the NBA where every open shot is going to be made. If there was an open shot, it was going in. If it was even not fully contested, like hand in the face, it was going in. That's how well they
contested shots. I mean, they made some really good contested shots too. They were hot, no doubt about it. I just think we gave them a lot of confidence by giving them open looks for the whole first 10 minutes of the game.
I wanted to shout out this guy, Boiled Goose, on Reddit. I told him he'd get a shout out because it's rare that you tag somebody on Reddit for making a good point on a wholly different thread, on a wholly different subreddit. But I was making some good points on being number 1. People like to act, especially in the F word or different sports, like you've been there before. Don't worry about it. We're going to win. It'll come if we win or whatever. Basketball is not built on a firm foundation right now. We are building a foundation under Bruce. One day Bruce will be gone. 10 years, 15 years, whatever. We hope it's 10, 15, whatever. And by the time he's gone, I hope we can look up and be like, Auburn basketball is legit. It's like Mike K at Duke. We didn't have a history and now we do. And you have to respect us. And we're going to continue this no matter who the coach is. One of those things is getting a number 1 ranking. We can't act like we've been there before. We haven't been there before. It's important to us. We can push for that kind of thing because it does matter. You've seen all the hype Baylor's gotten off this number 1 ranking. There was people commenting back to me that sure, Auburn might be number 1, but Baylor just passed the eye test. You know what? Baylor passed the eye test. They're very good. They are. But when you're number 1 coming into the year and number 1, Eastman gives you that kind of treatment. They talk about you. People tune into your games and watch. People, a lot of neutrals are not tuning into Auburn to see how we were doing most of this year. We get that number one ranking. People are tuning in and have opinions on our team and see what we can do. And that makes all the difference. And then on top of that, another one we've talked about so much on this podcast, the hype. It's real and it matters. Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas just got like a top 5 or top 10 class or something in basketball off the hype. They won Elite Eight last year. So good for them. That's why you get that kind of hype. But they got a huge class over this, sucking this year. I think they got to win today, but they're not that great this year. But they already signed that class. They already established that they're going to keep being good, at least talent-wise. You do number one this year, you get that in, you tell the AP voters you need to be number one. That's another solidification. A kid somewhere is watching in 9th grade that we're in number one. In a year or two when Bruce calls so early, honestly. A kid in 7th grade is turning into 8th or 9th grade. And when Bruce calls, he's going to remember when Auburn was number one. Even if we're down next year, he's going to remember that we are capable of being number one. And that's my rant. It's important.
It is important. And I love that Bruce told the announcers for this game, it does matter. It is. I mean, we're not going to sugarcoat it. It's something we've never done. Bruce's big thing is, hey, we're going to make history. That's what he's been saying since he got here. He did it at Tennessee. I don't know if they had ever been number one. Maybe they had, but it had been a really long time. And when he was at Tennessee, same kind of thing. He got a really good team. He got him to number one. There were some epic clashes of like Tennessee and Memphis in the top 5 back then. I remember that distinctly.
I hope we have some like similar stuff, man. I remember that, like, that's what Bruce can do your program. I was a neutral fan. I mean, I was cheering on Auburn stuff during the Lebo days and stuff, but I tuned into Tennessee games. I tuned in to see Bruce take his shirt off in that game. And I watched a women's basketball game because I knew that Bruce was going to be painted up in the student section because they'd hyped that game. That's the kind of stuff Bruce can do your program. He can get you to tune into women's basketball games on ESPN. Yeah, so it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. And again, I hope they are rewarded with that. I think the resume, it's Auburn or Gonzaga. We'll see what happens. But I just hope they get it so he can.
It's easy peasy, in my opinion, to be like, no, Gonzaga, you can't be number one against SB Northern. They have 2 losses, I believe, and one of those is to the team we just beat away that they lost to on a neutral floor. I don't know how else you do it. Quad 1 and 2 wins is a big way to kind of measure resumes. If you have a lot of quad 1 and 2 wins, we have more quad 1 and 2 wins than any other team in the nation right now. It's easy. The only reason we wouldn't get it is pre-season hype from Gonzaga and AP voters being lazy. I love that I'm hearing from national writers and people pushing, we should be number one if the AP writers do the right thing. And I think enough AP writers will hear that from the different power. What we talked about with Marlene, who the power brokers are in college basketball. I think enough power brokers in college basketball are pushing the narrative that the AP voters need to do the right thing and put us number one.
Well, and Joe Lunardi today has us as the number 1 overall seed in the whole tournament as of today. CBS had us number 1 early. They had us number 2 early. I listened to their podcast, and the guy that puts that together was saying he's been on our bandwagon a little bit the last couple of weeks, and he said, I'm going to single-handedly make Auburn number 1 because the AP voters don't always listen and do the thing they should do. So I put them as number 1. I want everyone else to know they should be number 1. I said, he's one of the power brokers. We asked Marlene who the power brokers were. He's one of them. And he said, people need to do the right thing and do number 1. I'm hoping some of these AP brokers that might be more lazy listen to this podcast and hear him talk like that and say, all right, if you say I need to, Well, and hey, if we're not, it's another chip on your shoulder. Hey, let's go kick butt. And it's
I'm tired of the chips. I'm tired of the chips on the show. I'm ready to be the guy.
Let me just tell you, that's all Bruce is going to do the rest of the year. Even if we're number 1 all year, he's going to be putting chips on those shoulders of those guys and convincing them that nobody thinks they can actually win anything, and they might have them at number 1. I mean, that's how he's lived his life. So we're always, and it's a perfect fit for Auburn.
Master motivator,
yes.
Isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And I just think it's setting up nicely. You talked about we're coming back home now. You survived a week on the road with multiple back-to-back games. You get Georgia at home on Wednesday, and then you get Georgia and Kentucky, setting up to be a CBS national game. So if Auburn's number 1, man, that game, and either way, right? No matter what, that game is going to be massive. Kentucky's playing really well right now. So I'm already kind of looking ahead, but we got to make sure tonight should have taught some of these players maybe you better show up every night in this league or you're going to be in trouble.
And little inside knowledge, if you listen to our podcast, you learn new things that maybe you didn't know. on our podcast, Marlene, which we'll probably release in the next day or two. We'll see which day we release it. But we asked her, has College Game Day contacted you yet about that game on the CBS? Kentucky dominated Tennessee today, shot an ungodly like 70+%. We'll talk more about that around the SEC. But that's setting up for maybe a number 1 versus like a number 10 or number 12 or something like that. Kentucky in Auburn. We had game day 2 years ago for a similar situation. She said no one has contacted her yet from College Game Day. Very disappointing. Matt looked it up. We're not sure if they're actually traveling this year at College Game Day or not, but hopefully if we're not already getting the Jabari treatment that he deserves, like with the JJ Redick, the Cade Cunningham, the Zions, the Blake Griffins, that game, if he goes off in that game, he better get the Heisman Trophy, whatever you want to talk about, the spotlight, the Naismith, whatever,
Well, and we are getting the center stage. She mentioned how much bigger of a deal CBS is because they have the tournament rights. They have that prime. We've seen it in football for. Oh, I said it. I'm sorry. We've seen it for years.
We're gonna have to bleep that. We're gonna have to beep that out, Matt. The F word. He's explicit podcast.
But we've got Brad Nessler and Bill Raftery, who's a legend. I mean, he's the Dick Vitale probably now. And Dick Vitale's still doing games, but you know what I mean. He is one of the voices of college basketball, and they're going to be in Auburn Arena next Saturday. So I'm just thrilled that we got this win tonight to not take any wind out of our sails, because I think if Auburn comes in full steam ahead and takes care of business against Georgia, that's going to be a heck of a game.
I know we still have more game to talk about. We're already on the subject of some of the rant stuff. It also irritates the mess of me in college basketball. They put these TV schedules and times together at the beginning of the season, like way back in October, November. They chose to put at noon the Tennessee-Kentucky game. Sure, it's nice at night or whatever, but that was their ranked matchup, Tennessee and Kentucky, and that's why they put it there. I think if you switch the names around and it's number 4 Kentucky against Ole Miss, all of a sudden that game gets changed or whatever. It's annoying that we get the one CBS game because it's Kentucky, honestly, at this point. And I think we deserve a couple more spotlights down the stretch. And there's going to be some games on SEC Network that should have been ESPN or should have been CBS. They're going to irritate me because they chose that so early. Someone's got to figure it out. If college football can figure out the scheduling that far in advance each time, and ESPN owns the rights to so many of these games, you have to be able to switch this stuff around and give us that ESPN treatment over the SEC Network. Like, I get it because I get through my parents' like cable thing and pirate it. But there's a lot of bars and a lot of neutrals around the country that don't have SEC Network and are missing out on this huge piece of college basketball that could be us.
Yeah. I think that's what happens when you're picked 5th.
I mean, that's what, then we'll go back to the hype. Gotta get, we need the hype to get these.
To add some nuance to it, there are probably 4 to 6 of our 18 conference games that are flexed. So they are either they're going to be on at this time on ESPNU or this time on ESPN and what you're going to see is those games, Auburn will get flexed to the better spot. It's already happened. I think the Alabama game moved from ESPN2 to ESPN because they had an opening. But you're right. I think there should be a little less. There's got to be a way to be a little less planned ahead on some of the TV schedules for sure.
Yeah. We'll skip your second one. Your second one was Ken Walker Kessler stay out of foul trouble on the road. Both of you had the same thought. We talked about that. Last one is, will Auburn be able to dictate the pace and bring the energy in the second of the back-to-back road games?
Yeah, I do think whether we're tired or overly emotional after the Alabama win or whatever, we had the basketball game given to us in the first half. They were taking it to us in a lot of different ways. Second half, it completely flipped. We took control. There's got to be a better way to say it, but you know what I mean? Watching that game, the second half, Auburn, the best words that come to mind just from watching that is Auburn dictated the pace. Auburn was in control of the flow of that second half, and it started, in my opinion, on defense and locking in on that side, because that's what gets you out running. That's what gets you momentum to hit those logo threes, to hit the alley-oops and all that stuff. So first half, a resounding no, and then the second half, a pretty resounding yes.
We talked about it a little bit already, but we never got running the way we wanted to this year. Part of it's out of conference, part of it's how good this team is, that we dominated the out of conference, even though there's a lot of good quad wins in there. That it seems to be the identity we love is to be running nonstop, constantly going back and forth with alley oops and transition threes and stealing the ball and things. We've kind of been stopped from some of that, some from the whistles against Alabama, some we just couldn't get it going this game. And it's weird we win by 9 on the road against Ole Miss, and we're like, it was kind of frustrating. We went down 14, The Alabama game was kind of like this too. And it's because we can't seem to break through the way we did earlier in the year to have these amazing times where we have a 10-0 run that like just feels like, yes, Auburn basketball, we're monsters, So it's like frustrating to see that. But man, to win like in these million different ways, like at some point our personality is just that we can win any way we need to.
Well, you got to think about who you're playing, I've been on record. I think this league is, if they're not the best in the country, they're close. It's deep. Outside of Georgia, good luck every night.
Texas you saw that with Missouri, Alabama. We were joking on how bad Missouri is this year, and then they just went and beat Alabama. Alabama went there and lost on the road, and that's the SEC.
I mean, it can happen to you. If you don't think it can happen to you, pay attention. And you mentioned the history, but Auburn's 4-10 against Ole Miss since Bruce arrived at Auburn. I mean, like, just to put that, I think Auburn had lost 10 of 12 in that arena. Ole Miss was 8-1 at home this year. You better not go anywhere outside of your home arena thinking that it's going to be easy. And you just look at Texas A&M. They're 4-0. I mean, they beat Missouri today. Not that they play Kentucky this week, which will be interesting. One of those teams right behind us will lose.
Who are you cheering for? We went down our list on who we're cool with winning.
A&M.
Me too. I think they're like, just go ahead and get that win. We'll figure it out later. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Kentucky being one game behind me scares me. I wish they would have lost one more already.
I would love some cushion just in case they shoot and play as well as they did today in Auburn Arena.
Look, they could beat us. I think it'd be crazy to think.
I think we'll get into it a little bit there. I think an interesting kind of segment we should start doing going forward with like some of the opponents we're playing before we go down our roster and give our little thoughts on every player. An opposing player that played really well. Personally, for me, I'd like to hear what you think, like a player that you want to shout out from an opposing team. This Fagan guy was not a great player. He was a guy that came off the bench and scored 12 points in the first half. He was averaging like 8 points and came in and scored 12 points in the first half. So that was brutal. I'm not sure. Is he the guy that was backing down Kessler and everybody earlier? Was that a different guy?
No,
shout out to that guy too. We've had some issues with guys shooting really well. If they can back down Kessler and get a good shot, they're really making those a lot. It's kind of frustrating because Kessler's such a great shot blocker against a lot of these guards and different people that are coming in. But he has had Castleton, Sonogo, and this guy kind of back him down and do some really nice moves to get these easy buckets. And it'll be curious to see Shebway from Kentucky is going to be, it's going to be, if Kessler's getting pushed around on those, it's going to be brutal.
But I would also say, second half, Kessler completely flipped that. First half was kind of like everybody, a little bit of a struggle. I thought he dominated the bigger 7-footer in the second half in every way. So he can do, he has shown me so much of a higher ceiling than I expected. But so Brooks was good, the big guy. Morrell is probably their best player. He played 38 minutes. He had 13. He was good, especially early. He hit all his open shots. Fagan, though, you're right, 17 points. At one point, he's a 50% free throw shooter this year, and he went 3 for 3, and all of them were swishes. One was after he got hurt. He could barely walk, comes up there, drains a free throw. So he was really good. But just the overall physicality of Ole Miss, we got to play them again. So that's not a fun. It's never been a fun team to play. It's like South Carolina in some way. It's different, but we were on that in the SEC preview. That it's not fun.
And shout out to the free throw shooting of both teams. It's such a weird game. Like for some reason, I know it was way less free throws than last game and the game before, but it's still weird that they hit 100% and we hit 90+%. It's very strange. I don't know what happened. How did they not miss one out of 8? Like they only shot 15. We ended up shooting 16. It felt like they shot more for sure, and they didn't miss a single free throw. So shout out to them. Like that's how it should be.
Yeah, you got to give credit to their effort. They beat us on the glass. They beat us up in the first half. They shot the ball well. They weren't scared of the moment. Ultimately, though, you see what happened when Auburn drove to the basket. Ultimately, free throws almost balanced out. They made 15. We made 14. They 100%. I don't know if I've seen that in a long time. Threes, they hit all those open threes. By the end of the game, they made 8. We made 8. The difference we made 5 more 2-point field goals, and that's a direct correlation of going to the basket in the second half, like you mentioned.
Let's go down the roster a little bit. We've talked about a lot of these players already. I like the format we've kind of stumbled upon, that we end up kind of talking about the whole game and a lot of the players as we go. And then if we miss something, we kind of clean it up here, I feel like, at the end. We talked about Kessler a good bit. I think maybe there's a little more to talk about Jabari. Those run stoppers are just great. He's a freak. I feel like he's embraced the spotlight. We talked with Marlene a little bit about how much attention he's starting to get and how much attention you're going to see on him in the next week. It feels like the avalanche is finally broken with Jabari. And if the Alabama game is the kind of games he's going to produce when pressure's on him and the spotlight's on him, bring it on.
He was great. His offense was really good early. We have such high expectations for him. He is really uncomfortable when he's running in the open court dribbling. And there was the ugly possession you mentioned. He threw the ball like right to the opponent twice in this game. Had 2 turnovers. So he's got he's never going to come back. I wish everybody on this team could come back next year and do it again, like with eligibility. But he's still got room to grow, and I think that's what makes him such a enticing NBA prospect. Is you can see like it's raw a little bit, but man, the material he has mentally, physically, skill wise, I mean, it really is a marvel to watch, and I know everybody's enjoying it. I've never seen. To me, it's not a certain, other sport quarterback who was really good, but it's kind of that next level kind of guy. And it's really awesome to watch him.
I think for a 6'9" power forward, he's more comfortable on the open court than all but like 5 people in the world, maybe. I think the issue is this x-axis of he's slightly more, he dribbles more than he should. Like he's just right past it to where like he almost could just go. Half the time I wish he would just start dribbling up the court, and he does a lot, way more than anybody his size should. There's always one possession at this point per game that he does it a little too much, and that's the issue. It's not that he's can't do it. It's that he's always a little bit more confident than he should be at that, just a little bit.
I just wonder if he's hesitant. Like I've seen him go coast to coast, and it's almost like he gets stuck in the middle, and I've just seen for a player of his
caliber, want him to go more. You think he could do more?
I'm confused. It confuses me to see a guy that good at everything, and I've seen him go coast to coast, and I've seen him handle the ball. For him to just be like throwing it in danger against the presses consistently when we've gotten pressed, it confuses me. Like that possession at the end of the game, he had one where I maybe saw the wrong jersey or something. Maybe that's just an accident. But then 2 possessions later, it comes down just completely out of control. It's a miracle that we ended up with the ball after that. And I just think for a guy that big with that much skill, you've got to. And Stephen Pearl, bless his heart, on the side. I love watching Stephen Pearl. He was just yelling at him while the play's going on after Wendell got the ball. Jump stop, take care of the ball. Oh, like, why are you running out of control at this point in the game? It's so dumb.
Oh, yeah, that last minute or two, there was some out of control stuff that was like, we're up like 7 or 8. Just hold on to the ball and get like one good drive. He might be, you don't know if he could keep going. He doesn't know if he should keep going. Bruce might not know if he should keep going. We don't know. We have seen him go coast to coast, and that is some of those impressive stuff we've ever seen. That, I think it was the Florida game at the end of the half that he dribbled all the way down the court and hit that jumper. So we know at times he can do it. I don't know. At this point, you wish maybe you'd done it a couple of games back, like proving it out. Like, let's see him. Let's tell him to push it. And if he's turning the ball over, we say, all right, we know for sure that you should treat yourself as like a very mobile power forward. But we also seen that you could treat yourself as a mobile 3 that just pushes it all the way down the court. So I don't know where it is either. He does do about once a game, turns over the ball because he pushes it too hard.
That was always my wonder. Would we try to play him smaller than he's his position? And I can see why we haven't, because I don't think right now at this point in his career, he's as comfortable on the wing.
It's right there though. And there's all, but at 6'9", there's only like a handful of people that can do that. Kevin Durant's one of those people, and there's very few other people that can do that.
Right. And I guess my point is he's going to be playing against those guys next year. And there are guys at the next level, not just Kevin Durant, who are that size, who can put the ball on the floor without turning it over. And he can
Oh,
too.
without turning over, they know when to stop and when to make the pass and stuff. We've talked about Flanagan some. We're going to keep watching the trend on him. We don't need him to be like this guy. This team's already full of dudes, so we don't need him to be the dude. But I do want him to be an option of the dude. I need the chemistry to get better. I think it's like crucial that we get that guy because he can do that one thing that other people can't do. So it's just something to watch. I don't know if you have any other thoughts about Flanagan.
No, just glad he's playing a starter's role in starter's minutes. And it's great to be winning. And it's great that this, but I do think don't underestimate the fact that this team has had to like play and gel for 10 or 12 games without him there. And it's harder in basketball than you would think to kind of work that in after when a team is 10-1 when you haven't played. You know, like it's not as easy as just there's all the psychology of these five guys that played together, and now we're adding another guy who's really good, but none of those guys played with him last year. And you've talked about being concerned about that. I think it's something we track, but I would say we need to give him, 8, 10, 12 games before we really start panicking. He looks healthy. He looks good on defense for the most part, and driving and getting those tough baskets and the free throws, against Alabama, just massive, like we talked about last episode.
And I think in basketball, you watch trends. One game doesn't kill anything. There's so many games in a season that a missed three like that with Flanagan is tough because you're trying to work him back in and tell this team that's already gelled so well, has already won all these games, is going to be number one in the country, that this guy's an alpha and you need to defer to him. But then he misses air balls a three in a crucial moment. He can't do that again. He can't do that 2 games in a row. He can't make that a trend. So I don't think he will. I think he's going to have some great threes. But the next guy's KD Johnson. We did talk about him some, but because we've ragged on him so much at times, or not ragged, but just have really nitpicked some of the stuff with him, I really want to give him one more shout out for how well he played today. You don't have to be the biggest guy in the world and make every single play. And I think this game shows that hit your open threes, make those same steals, make the extra pass, and all of a sudden you're the X factor that changes this game completely. And I think I'm hoping that we see it again about the trends. I hope this game becomes a trend. The next game, he's doing the same kind of stuff where we just come on and go, man, no one can do what KD does.
Tonight was such a good night for him. He hit crucial. He had one little stretch where he forced up 2 threes after he made a big one when we were down big. But man, you just outside of that, let that go. I still want him to try to make a layup in the open court instead of trying to get fouled. But ultimately, his steals at the end of the first half really gave Auburn. You and I talked. We were so happy to be down 6 at halftime for how that first half went. I mean, and KD really, you forget, we're down 9. Ole Miss has the ball and they can run it for the last shot, and they're getting the ball to start the second half. There's a world where you're down 13 or 14 again the next time you touch the ball if KD doesn't make those 2 steals. So his ferocity on defense, his energy was great tonight. His body language was great tonight. He made great passes to teammates. And I texted somebody else, like, when he plays his style of ball and combines that with really under control decisions, he is a scary dude to defend. I mean, he was dropping passes to Kessler. He was hitting open shooters. And perhaps the best thing of the night, there was a key rebound Auburn got late in the game, and he's been able to close these games out. Bruce really trusts him down the stretch. And he just immediately, there was a guy leaking out for a pass he could have thrown 3/4 court down there. He didn't. He said, he brought back Wendell and gave him the ball. And it was like, that's such a simple little thing, but he didn't insist that he had to bring it up. He didn't throw the crazy pass. He didn't go charging down court. So you're right. Everything we've given, been critical of at times, this night is all the things we fell in love with early in the season with him. And it's great to see it happen in an SEC game where we really needed it.
I think it's safe to say we've been calling him the Hamburglar. He had his Hamburger moments, and his Hamburglar moments in this game were some of the biggest ones in all the games he's played. But I think it's safe to say he's the most dangerous man on the court. Like, sure, Jabari's the best player, the most talented. KD, man, you don't know what's going to happen, and it's dangerous on us and them. But luckily, way more on them. Playing defense against him or offense against him. It's got to be like this, like back of the head kind of thing that there's this guy KD out there, and you don't know what he's going to do. Anything can happen.
You're absolutely right. Nobody would want to play against that guy. And just look at his shots. I mean, for as engaged as he was, he 4 for 8 shooting, 3 for 7 from 3, and all 3 of those were massive shots in the first and second half. And then 3 of 4 at the line. If he can shoot efficiently and not shoot a ton, which we've talked about a lot on this podcast, and bring all the other stuff he brings to the table that nobody else on this roster can bring. Nobody else can do what KD does for this team. And
I don't know if I saw a bad 3-point shot this game. There were some bad ones in the Alabama game. Off the top of my head, there's not one I'm angry about. Now, there's some contested ones and some NBA stuff. I don't remember one in my head that's making me angry that I said to myself when they took that, I'm going to be angry about that on the podcast.
The only one, and again, this is it, the whole game, which is awesome for me. I'm very critical, and I kind of watch him with a critical eye if I'm not careful. I want to appreciate how good he is, but they missed a dunk that would have made it like a 16-point lead or something. They missed a dunk wide open, came down the other end, KD's wide open, hits a 3. And it's like, all right, here we go. Next time down, or maybe the next 2 times down, he forced 2 that were pretty bad, no passes on the offensive possession, and he didn't make either one. But that was it. And then and here's the other thing I wanted to point out. He sat a ton in the first half. Like they played Zep and Wendell a little more together, and then Flanagan's playing more. He was out for a long time, and for him to come in and not force the action and just make the plays he needed, get those steals, get to the basket, get fouled, like that really impressed me. And I think he's kind of maturing in his role, hopefully, on this team.
And I want to bring up that when I said that I didn't remember that 3, and maybe he did shoot this, is it wasn't just KD I'm thinking of. Flanagan shot a really stupid 3 last game. Wendell at times, he did that last game. That's why I didn't get the MVP. There's been several players on this team that have shot some bad 3s, and that's going to happen in Bruce's offense. It's just really nice at this game that there wasn't one that I noted in my head as I need to bring this up. The next guy is Zep Jasper. I'm sure that you are Zep Jasper's Matt is a Zep Jasper man, so I'll just let you go on about Zep.
It's just good to see. I love for me when he scores, it's just free offense, and he's not a big scorer, but he attacked the zone. Early in the game, he got an easy layup. He hit a 3. He hit another contested 3 that pushed our lead up to 6 or 7 on that huge run. He was on the court for the big run, and to me, the biggest thing from him, he just bothered the mess out of Deshaun Ruffin, their point guard. He completely kind of took over the beginning of that second half and just said, I'm going to guard him. And he is not doing any. He's not going to set up their offense. He's not going to make great passes. He's not going to score. And that's the hidden value of a guy like that. So glad he had a good game.
He's very efficient from 3. I love how efficient Zep's been, that I feel like if he's open, he's going to hit it, but he's not hunting for that shot, which is exactly what we need out of him when there's so many shooters on that starting lineup. A trend to watch. We talked about last game. We need him not to push off on those bringing up the court. He did not do that this game. He had 0 turnovers, 1 foul. We also talked about fouls last game. So he's quiet at times, efficient at times, plays hard defense. And so when we kind of talked about trends last game, we need to talk about in this game when he doesn't do the things we were worried about. He's back on the course where we're cool with what he's up to. 3 assists, 0 turnovers. The ratio, once again, is good. Zep, gotta love the quiet guy on this team, on a team full of several loud guys. The next one, talk about Jalen Williams. Didn't play a ton, 2 points, 1 rebound. I think he ended up with 8 minutes. Not a ton. We took that timeout to get Jabari in. For my thoughts with Jalen, we've talked about 1,000 times. Next year's year, Jalen, just come in and give solid minutes. He didn't do a stupid turnover like he has in the couple games in a row, so that's good. But that's probably because he played 8 minutes. Not a lot to say about Jalen this game.
No, he was real quiet. Like you said, his rotation got cut short in the first half by that timeout, and then the second half they only played him 1 rotation. 3, 4, 5 minutes into the second half, and then Jabari played the last 10 minutes the rest of the way, which that's the right move. And here's the thing: on a night when Kessler's playing that well and Jabari's playing that well, Jalen's just not going to play as much. We've seen when foul trouble happens, Jalen gets some extra minutes there at center. But hopefully he's a good soldier and can kind of keep the big picture in mind. Bruce always says the team success is best for y'all's individual success, for professional careers, for opportunities, and it's really true. And I think him and Cambridge accepting their roles on this team and trying to make the most of them, it's kind of one of the hidden gems of why this is working so well.
And I think it all very much helps when you're winning every game and you're going number one. And we talked about with Cardwell and Jalen that these guys are going to be future leaders on this team when they get their shot next year. Hopefully, maybe Kessler will come back. I doubt it, though, as we've seen the different trend of people leaving slightly earlier than they should. But Jalen got to show out, I think, in the South Carolina game, maybe it was the Florida game when Jabari was struggling. Jalen had a really good game. I think it was the Florida game, actually, started out really strong. The next guy on the list is Cardwell, and he also played very few minutes, 7 minutes. But guess what? Last game, Kessler had the awful foul trouble stuff that's partly his fault, partly the refs, and showed out and had an amazing game. Back to where he went the other way, Kessler had an amazing game. What a great problem to have. You have two guys that can play that position, and Kessler can thrive that hard to where you don't even need Cardwell. And then when you do need him, he's there and ready to play.
It could be a different guy every night. And, man, like you said, Cardwell's game against Alabama really got a lot of praise, well-deserved. Kessler tonight, just terrific. And Cardwell with 2 assists in 7 minutes, dishing the ball. He had another pass to Devin Cambridge running down the lane that was beautiful. He got fouled. So just good moving the ball, good energy. We know what we're getting from Cardwell. We want to get him on the podcast one day.
Yeah. Cambridge, I've been so critical of Cambridge. When Flanagan's back, I don't have to be critical of Cambridge. Cambridge didn't play a ton, 12 minutes, 1 point. He didn't have his alley-oop that he usually has this game because the things just never got running, and he usually gets that alley-oop when things really get running on streaks. It's just great that we don't have to put this critical eye on Cambridge. He was whatever. It was okay. He put some minutes in, played some defense. It was fine. I love that. I don't have to talk about him that much.
Yeah, and he had at least 2 of those threes. He was 0 for 3 from
he hit oh boy, somebody texted me. That was for you, Jackson, when he hit the wedgie, which if you don't know what a wedgie is in basketball, it's when you hit that weird shot that lands between the goal and the backboard and gets stuck. He shot a wedgie 3. It's worse than a brick or an air ball. I feel like it's embarrassing to hit a wedgie.
It's not. It just happens sometimes. But he's a streaky shooter. At least 2 of his threes.
He had that one streaky game against South Carolina. They said 2 games, right? 2, maybe, that he's been that streaky. He's not had. I don't know. I feel like we overdo it.
Him for 3 years. You can't tell me he's not a streaky shooter. Is it
good streaky? It's bad streaky. He's had like 2 games that he's gone off.
All right, let's see. Let's check this. We'll check the numbers.
Here we are talking about Cambridge. After I said I'm glad we don't have to talk about Cambridge anymore. But
my point was he had 2 open threes that were at pivotal moments, and he just missed them. Those are big moments for him. I think when he's in rhythm and open, he's been a really good shooter this year. So that was kind of disappointing, but like you said, it's good that we can have guys not play well, and it doesn't really matter.
I'm probably overly critical, but I think it's time to drop that he's a streaky 3-point shooter. Just say that he's a below average 3-point shooter that shoots too many, and he's a good alley-ooper and gives some decent moments while we wait for Flanagan to get back in. That's where I'm at with Cambridge, and that's okay. And he can get better and surprise me next year.
Okay, who's next?
We're looking at the stats here.
No, we can keep talking. I'm just curious.
We'll move on to the next one while you look up that stat. The last guy is Wendell Green. I feel like we talked about Wendell. We can do a Wendell love fest. I feel like we didn't give him MVP last game because Jabari just had such an ungodly game. But after watching the highlights again with Wendell, he has the cojones. We made a reel about the cojones. Wendell's just got him, and it's amazing. I think I saw Joe Lenardi or another writer put on Twitter today, which I can put Twitter now to Twitter, that he just shoots with such confidence. No one else does that. He hits those NBA threes and hit some big ones this game that you just love it. Sometimes I'm sitting on the couch, and when he goes out there and shoots that long 3, it sits in the air for so long that I'm off the couch about to it's just like there's so much time. The time slows down by 100 times while that ball's in the air until it goes in. And a lot, I don't know what the percentage is, but the majority of the time it goes in. It's so much fun to watch.
he just has such a great feel for the game. He and Bruce talked this week about Zep and Wendell play the same position, but they're so different. They approach the game so differently, and they both work in this offense. That's what kind of makes it great. But I'm just continually blown away by Wendell's poise. He's never scared of a big shot. He wants the big shot, and he just great guards have a way of knowing how to be in control of the ball, know when to get yours, and know when to get other people involved. And I'm always amazed with that coming off the bench. I feel like he's just so comfortable in this offense with this cast of characters, and it sets everything at ease when he's in there, especially offensively.
Do we have a career percentage on Devin Cambridge from three?
This is this year. I was just curious. He's right behind KD in 3-point percentage. I mean, he's
What's
ahead
percentage? 30%.
30. That's after tonight. He was like 32 or 33. So that's not great, but it's not bad.
Where's it at? Is it this 0.300?
Right
30%, right? From three?
Yep.
Okay. I literally had a percentage in my head. I was going to say that if he's supposedly a streaky 3-point shooter, it evens out. Some nights he's going to shoot in the 20s. Some night he's going to shoot in the 40s.
Yep.
He's going to get those big games. To even that out, you got to shoot 35% on your career to have for me to call you a streaky 3 shooter. I'm saying he's below average with 30% with how many he shoots. He shoots a decent amount for a guy that's supposed to be a backup dude right now.
Well,
this is just this year too, by the way. If we went out further in his career, I wonder if it goes down or up.
I'm just saying, I don't know how you can call a guy who's gone off for
like twice, maybe, right? It's that South Carolina game his freshman year, and then what's the other one? Wasn't there like one more, I think, where he went off into like the high 20s?
I just think everybody calls him a streaky shooter for a reason. He's a streaky shooter.
I think the reputation should be dead now.
Earlier
he did that twice, and he just lucked out just 2 times. He shoots too many times.
Earlier this season, he was anyway.
Did he have one? He had like one game that we talked about that he was. We're talking too much about Cambridge at this point. Let's pull up some around the SEC. Unless you have anything else you really want to talk about this game.
No, I guess we got to all the players. So just a great win. It's great to win a game when you stare losing in the face.
It's gonna be stressful, guys. We have the target on our back now. There's so much expectations for this team. We're gonna lose some games, and from here on out, there's not a single game on our schedule that we should lose. Like, we should be favored in every single game, even these away games that are so tough to win the SEC. We should be favored unless there's a team that's going to jump up and have like a top 10 ranking that we go on the road for. Because our biggest 2 road games, or our biggest road game, was that Alabama one. I don't know what our next biggest road game is. Tennessee, I guess, but they have not been playing that great. Arkansas was supposed to be good, and they're not playing that great. We got super lucky that our 2 biggest opponents right now, Kentucky and LSU, are both just home games.
Just be ready, because Ole Miss is sitting here. Granted, it's early, but Ole Miss is sitting here at 12th, tied for 10th in the league, and they gave us everything. At Florida is going to be tough. At Arkansas is going to be tough. At Tennessee is going to be tough.
If they'd won this game, though, they would have been 2-2, and they would have been way up there. So it's like a little bit. It's because they ran into the number 1 team in America. Yeah.
And they barely lost. I mean, like you said,
they would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They would have been 6, tied for 6th. So they fell. Do
you think Ole Miss? I mean, I
don't know what's going. I don't really know what's going on with Ole Miss. I do think you're right. It's going to be tough every time we go to away. I just don't think we're going to be unfavored in a single game the rest of the season. So when we do lose, which we will, it'll be tough because it will be a game that we weren't favored to lose. But we've never been in that position, I don't think.
But we just better be aware that that's what college basketball is, and that's what's happening to everybody this year and every year, really. So that's just part of the deal. This is so rare what this team is doing right now. I just hope we don't have the best basketball history to really call on, but like this is pretty legit special stuff that Auburn's doing, and I want it to continue.
It's the first time in our history. I know we don't have a great history at Auburn, but that's how rare this is. We've literally never done it in 100 years. So you're alive for this. You're like in whatever state you are, you're getting to like enjoy this basketball. Me and Matt are getting to enjoy this times 100 because we just so happen to start this podcast in maybe the best year ever to start this podcast. And we're thriving in it. So I love it.
Well, it was a good day around the league for us overall. Tennessee gets throttled by Kentucky, which Kentucky looks to me like by far the best team in the league, maybe with LSU right now with us.
We were cheering for Tennessee in this one. We have our list. If you go back to our SEC preview of like who we're cool with or whatever, we'd rather Kentucky overall win over Tennessee. But Kentucky's looking so good and Tennessee's already lost a couple of games that we were like, all right, let's have Tennessee beat this one. But man, Kentucky, if you didn't get to see that, had an ungodly game where they shot, I believe, 70+% of the field. I've never seen it before. I'm sure it's somewhere up in a record book now with how they shot. You just hope that was like Tennessee's just falling apart and they just didn't play very well against Kentucky. It was at home for Kentucky. I feel like every team that's got good talent's due for a game similar to that at some point. You just hope that's not the trend, that was like a one-off crazy game, And
it probably was, and it was at home. But I don't mind seeing Tennessee at 2-3 in the league, and struggling. So they will not be ranked anymore, which is fun.
Both Tennessee and Alabama should not be ranked in the next AP poll, and we should be number one. And going back to the SEC preview, going back to our first podcast, we would just be mind blown for any of those scenarios. We would be so happy. Like it's like a freaking sit down and dream that we could be number one, and our two like probably biggest rivals in basketball aren't ranked and are falling apart.
Well, and Alabama lost to Mississippi State. Arkansas
three in a row for Alabama.
Yeah,
3 in a row.
Arkansas beat LSU on the road. So just like you said, the picture that we would have painted, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Alabama are 3 games behind us already. I mean, they're 3 back. LSU's 2 back, and we beat them.
And LSU is getting so much hype in this last week. People were talking about like, sure, they lost to Auburn, but they've only lost. I think that we were their only loss at that point. So they only lost 1 game. Their defense is just the best in the world. Watch out for them. By the end of the year, maybe they lost the Auburn game, but they still win the SEC and they like go nuts on everybody. And then they lose to an Arkansas team that's been really struggling this year. That is 12-5 now. Musselman hurt his shoulder on a trying to like do some sort of drill or something. The madman of Musselman over there. They've fallen apart, and now it's weird to like, you want some of these teams to keep falling apart, but you also need them to beat LSU. So you just hope that was like LSU falling apart,
That was good. We'll take that. It's always good for a team like LSU to lose at home. That's good. I mean, really, Kentucky and A&M are the teams like in our rearview mirror right now. A&M's 15-2 quietly. I know their schedule wasn't super tough, and their SEC schedule hasn't been that tough.
Can we pull up Texas A&M schedule? Because that's an interesting one that we will look back maybe at this part of the year in podcast. I'm hoping one day that we do so well in this season that people, and us particularly, probably will want to look back and be like, what were we thinking at that point in the season or whatever? We might look up at the end of the season and Texas A&M beat us and won the SEC or something, and we just had no idea at the time how great they were. Or we could be looking back and being like, of course Texas A&M was not that great and they lost all those games down the stretch. But we need to see their schedule
they've only beaten Georgia, Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Missouri. So they don't really.
And that Arkansas win would have been a good win even a couple weeks back. But now that Arkansas win, with Arkansas being bad.
That Arkansas team just went and kicked LSU's butt today on the road. So, I mean, don't get down. Arkansas, like you said, with their recruiting class, I know they have 3 losses. I think this speaks to the league. But like I mentioned, A&M, it's about to get real. They have Kentucky at home this week, then at Arkansas, at LSU. So the next 3 games will tell a lot about A&M.
I think we're cheering for crazy home court advantage, crowds going nuts, and they beat Kentucky, but then lose at Arkansas and at LSU because it was like a come up for them or whatever. That'd be nice. Yeah, I think that'll be the test, though, is that Kentucky game for them, if they're legit or not. I'm just hoping that we'll probably crown them as legit if the Kentucky game and they lose 2 in a row at away because they're normal good instead of great good like us.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Like I think I want A&M to mow all those teams down, and I'll take my chances with A&M down the stretch. I mean,
how about this? What a great we talked about a little bit about the March Madness stuff in the SEC tournament not being where we want to watch us play or whatever's bad. But man, we play LSU, Kentucky, and Texas A&M all at home. We don't play any of them away. What a setup! Now that we've sussed out a little bit of how this is going to go, that we've like clearly put into tiers that right now Kentucky takes it over the top, and we kind of before that Arkansas loss, LSU was that. How did we set this up? Those were the ones we play at home and not away. That's great.
We called it. I mean, we called it before the season. We thought it was a favorable schedule.
We thought at Tennessee was a bad one, and that's not as bad as we thought.
But I was thrilled to only play them once, and
Yeah.
I still am. I don't want to play them twice.
And no matter what Kentucky team it is, it's always good to have them just at home and not in Rupp. Even if it's one of their down years, they're just always going to be talented under Calipari. Like it's going to take even whoever's even after Calipari, it's going to take years of like messed up coaching just to not have a talented team there.
Yeah, it felt like we were playing Kentucky twice almost every year. So I'm glad we're finally done with that for a while. We should only be playing them once for the next few years.
That's the SEC, and we were just going to do SEC stuff, but man, we're so good nationally now. I think we have to look at the AP top 25 to show you how insane this week's been and how crazy it is. It's almost an upset that we even won both away games the way everyone else in college basketball is playing. And it's frustrating to me to listen to national podcasts. And I hope this narrative changes the next week. And I guess you can't blame them because it's not like we thought we were going to be this great coming into the season. But I heard somebody talk about it. They were like, oh man, are there any elite teams this year? It's kind of crazy this year. And last year there were Baylor and Gonzaga and they were so elite and we knew they were elite. And we've had other years when we knew they were elite. And this year just doesn't seem like we know if there's any elite teams. Well, everybody else doesn't look elite. We look elite because Baylor lost 2 games this week. After I've heard people online, I'm going to go back and freaking comment on some people that told me that Baylor's eye test was still better than ours, even though we had better quad wins and everything. Gonzaga beat the mess out of BYU, scored 100 points. That's great and all, but they lost to Alabama on neutral fields. I feel like we should jump them. UCLA didn't play a lot of games. Sorry if I'm going on the list too quick.
They lost.
Yeah, UCLA didn't play a lot of games because of COVID, and they got a lot of respect after that March Madness run, even though I felt like they got a little too much respect. They came in as 11 seed. Some teams just catch fire, and I don't know if I felt like they got a little too much hype off their March Madness. But anyways, they came back and lost a home game against Oregon that had no fans. So it sucks for them. They didn't have any fans there, but also it's still a home game. You still get a certain amount of advantage for that. Oregon has not been that great this year. Then you get to us. We're amazing. We're the best. We're number 1. We've never done anything wrong in our lives. Then we come to USC at number 5, and they were undefeated coming into this week and lost to Stanford at Stanford with no fans. Arizona, I'm not sure. There's a couple more losses in here. Kansas lost at 9. Michigan State lost at 10. Duke lost at 8. So 8, 9, 10 all lost also.
Didn't Duke lose last week? Did they lose again?
Maybe you're right. Maybe they lost last week.
They lost last week.
At home to Miami. So at some point recently, they've lost at least. Arizona and Purdue, I'm not sure what they did, but they're already behind us. So I feel good. If we're not number 1 on Sunday or Monday, it's because our name is Auburn instead of another blue blood name, honestly. That's how I feel about it.
I have a couple updates as we do this. Arizona did beat Utah at home, so they'll move up a lot. The big one that I just found, 15 minutes left in the game, but USC is currently down 18 against Oregon at home.
Wow.
So
Oregon's gonna have a huge come up if they beat UCLA and USC back to back, 2 top 5 teams. Oregon's had a tough year so far.
So I mean, I think what you'll see when you look around, there's parity in college basketball, but there's parity within these leagues too. You're gonna see a bunch of losses every week, and the great part about where Auburn sits now is that, like you talked about, I like the terminology, building a foundation, right? Like you're building a resume all year for the tournament. And what Auburn has done is put itself in a position to compete for championships, obviously in the SEC, but also, you give yourself some wiggle room, because ultimately, when Auburn loses a game or 2 or 3 or whatever along the way, other teams are going to be losing as well. Maybe not Gonzaga because of their conference, which is always kind of tricky for the committee to deal with. But
I think it helps they lost to Alabama when we beat Alabama. It like gives a very linear, I know we can't always do that game where you play who'd you beat, who'd I beat or whatever. But I think this one's pretty clear that you can do that, because it's already going to feel like we're splitting hairs. Then on top of that, we have more quad 1 and 2 wins than them. And then on top of that, you could even say, if you're still not convinced, even by the quad 1-2 win kind of thing, you can put on top of that. And they've played the same team, and one lost to them and the other one beat them. So, and just to reiterate this top 10 that I went through, 6 of the top 10 lost. That's huge. That's a crazy week. You love it. It's even better because it wasn't us. And if we're not number one, you're going to have some angry Instagrams and tweets from us.
And potentially 1 and 5 losing twice, both games in the week. So, I mean, it really, and look, Auburn could have lost both games this week. I mean, the Alabama game, they almost blew a 14-point lead. They were down 14 tonight. It just makes you appreciate, like we keep saying, finding creative ways to win, whatever it takes, whoever it takes. And I think the exciting thing, we talked about non-conference, how Auburn was just kind of rolling over people by double digits and stuff. Well, that's changed now that you get in the league, although they did have 3 double-digit wins. But even that, LSU was tough. Florida was tough. Alabama was tough. Ole Miss was tough. That's how it's going to be night in and night out. And it's actually, in my opinion, great for this team to get ready for winning time in tournaments and stuff at the end of the year. You have to go through these. You have to learn about yourself and your team and how you respond. And I thought the announcers did a great job of talking about, this team just doesn't flinch so far this year. They don't flinch no matter what situation they're in. They don't panic, and they continue to take these punches. The 14-0 run against Alabama on the road, the punch this tonight in the first half, and they just respond. So it's really impressive.
We just keep finding different ways to win, and this will all pay off when we get to the most important parts of the year. To me, I keep bringing that. I hate to even bring that up because I think these are the most important parts. Enjoy this part of the year. People put too much emphasis on March. We're doing some amazing things right now, but we know that I can give it at least as much respect that it's 50-50. Enjoy this as much as you do March. And in March, it's also important, and we're going to have these kind of wins in our bag. A big mantra that Bruce has been saying this week, and you might have heard it too, and I think it's going to be a thing he's going to keep saying all year: keep winning while getting better. Yep. That's what he's been saying all year. This team has been getting better, but we also want to win at the same time while we get better. It's an easy thing to say or whatever, but it's just been very astute with this team that we just keep winning and finding ways to win. But we know we haven't peaked yet, and at least in my opinion, that there's still a Flanagan to get in there. There's still a more confidence for Jabari. Kessler's still got a couple of things to figure out, and like offensive moves, and still a little more chemistry to figure out. KD, we talked about Wendell even at times to figure a couple of things out. I think that's going to be what keeps us motivated. Is we know we have not reached the peak that we need to reach, and that's why we need to keep working hard, and we have to win at the same time because now we know how special this season can be.
It's so much more fun to learn. That film study on the defensive effort in the first half is not going to be fun, in my opinion, when they do that tonight or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. But it's much more fun for coaches and players to make the changes you need to make, learn from stuff when you're winning, especially on the road. There's nothing sweeter than winning on the road, and to do that and be able to learn valuable lessons. You're right. And that's the challenge for the coaches, is to convince the players. They see the ceiling of this team. Surely they watch it every day in practice, but do you understand that if you don't get better, these other teams we're going to run into at the end of the year are going to be getting better? There's always teams that get hot at the end. We saw that with our team 2 years ago. You better keep getting better even when the wins are piling up. And I think they're trying to do that. Like you said, I think they're doing a good job of having that outlook.
I think it's going to be an interesting concept for Bruce. He's done such a great job of having teams peak at the right time. For them to be playing this well at this point in the season, he's going to have to figure out how to either, if we not manufacture a lull or whatever, but if we don't naturally end up in a lull, he's going to have to figure out what that means to keep us at this high of a level for this long. I don't know if he has had that in his career. We've definitely